I need to start by thanking all my incredibly patient Twitter birds for hanging with me while I descend into madness trying to film this video. I've already filmed this video 4 times this week. This is the 5th time. I don't want to ever have to film it again. Twitter really has been the place to be this week for the hamster community. Well, maybe not actually the place to be, probably the place to avoid, unless you have incredibly good blood pressure. I don't normally cover videos like this, but I had so many of you tweeting at me, there were so many people talking about this was just the entire news that was going on this week, and I was so bothered by a single particular aspect. I was bothered by a lot of things about this, but I was bothered enough by one part that I decided I'm gonna have to make a video talking about it, or I'm never going to get it out of my head. For those of you who are out of the loop, earlier this week somebody called Chrissy Teigen, who has a fairly big following of 10.9 million, decided to get herself a pet hamster, which is fair enough on its own. That's brilliant, that's perfect, more people coming into hamster owning. It's a wonderful thing. For about 5 seconds. I'm not going to spend time going into a ton of detail on every single tweet she made on this topic, because that was what caused my last 4 videos to go off on 37 tangents. But to summarize why hamster Twitter was rightfully up in arms, Christine bought herself a hamster without having done any research beforehand. She had it in a poor cage. She seemed to get a lot of her information on the day of purchase from apparently the pet shop, which I'd be preaching to the choir if I said that's something you shouldn't do. Although on the off chance you didn't know, don't get pet care advice from pet shops. So there were plenty of genuinely concerning issues with this, from somebody with a huge audience and huge influence promoting the impulse buying of pets and not being a responsible pet keeper by doing research beforehand, and contributing to the continuous uphill struggle that is trying to educate people on proper hamster care and get them to actually stop seeing hamsters as children's toys and start seeing them as members of the family, as you're supposed to do with all pets. The true sugar sprinkling on this cake was in fact her justifying not doing research on an animal and impulse buying it by saying it's okay because she also didn't research being a parent before her kids were born. It's been an amazing journey for me this week because I started it off having never heard of this person and knowing nothing about them, and I've ended off my week with the only thing I know about them being that they definitely need to get someone to check their tweets before they tweet them. If anyone thinks I'm being harsh by saying that, you'll be very glad I didn't release any of the first 4 videos. So partway along in this mess, she tweeted out a video of her new hamster in a tiny and inappropriate cage, chewing on the bars, and asked, "Is this normal?" Which in itself, perfectly fine question. No problems whatsoever with her asking that. It's a genuine question. I'm very glad that she asked it rather than just presuming that it was normal. However, the replies to this tweet, while thankfully there were a lot of people who were saying, no, this isn't normal and this is how you can fix it, there were a scary number of people who were not only saying, yes, this is perfectly normal, but there were people sharing videos and photos of their hamsters chewing the bars. There were people justifying bar chewing with completely false information and myths about bar chewing, and there was just a lot of misinformation being spread, which concerned me on a whole nother level because of all things in 2019, I cannot believe there are still people who think bar chewing is normal. I thought we dealt with this 5 years ago. And I do just want to clarify again, I am in no way annoyed by people just not knowing if bar chewing is good or bad behavior. There is nothing wrong with not knowing something like that because it's not the sort of thing you'd think to research before getting a hamster. It is the sort of thing where you'd see the hamster doing it and then you'd go and find out, is this a normal behavior? And if not, what should I do to fix it? What I am annoyed by are the number of people who are insisting that it's a normal, healthy behavior and spreading myths and spreading misconceptions, and they have clearly not done any research, because the first thing you would find out if you just took 30 seconds to Google about bar chewing is that it's not a normal or healthy behavior. That is why I'm so frustrated right now, and that is why I wanted to make this video. People continuing to spread stupid misinformation. So let me start off by answering what I feel would be the most obvious first question, and that is, if bar chewing is bad, what causes a hamster to start bar chewing? And more importantly than that, what causes a hamster to bar chew persistently? The occasional nibble on the bars here and there doesn't tend to be a big issue. It's not a great behavior. We'll go into why in a little bit, but The focus is mainly on persistent bar chewing, constant bar chewing that happens frequently, a couple of times a week or more than that. Persistent bar chewing is one of the most common stress behaviors displayed in hamsters, along with other behaviors like monkey barring and pacing. A healthy, happy hamster that's living in a suitably large enclosure with plenty of things to do, plenty of stimulation, and that their enclosure is located somewhere in your home where they can live stress-free, that's not too loud, is not going to display stress behaviors like bar chewing. Now, hamsters are an animal that are prone to many stress-related diseases, and stress itself is incredibly harmful to them. So if your hamster is bar chewing persistently, you need to find out what the cause of that is, and 9 times out of 10 it is unfortunately the enclosure, but there are other factors that could be contributing. For example, and this partially applies to Christine's case, when you first bring a hamster home, this is typically the most stressful time of their life. Moving to a new home is not easy for a hamster, adapting to a new environment, new smells, leaving their old space that they felt safe in. It's not an easy transition, and it can take them quite a bit of time to settle in, usually a couple of weeks at least. Stress behaviors observed in the first month of having a hamster home is fairly normal and not usually something to be too concerned about. It's something to keep on your radar, and with bar chewing it's something you want to try and discourage. We'll explain why in a moment. But, and the reason I say this only partially applies to Christine is because, as mentioned, one of the main causes of stress is an unsuitable enclosure, and Christine clearly had her hamster in that video in an unsuitable enclosure, as did, I think, every single person who posted a video of their hamster bar chewing had their hamster in an enclosure that was far too small, and most of them had not enough in there to keep the hamster busy and stimulated. Now, before I get into exactly what kind of damage bar chewing can cause for a hamster's physical health, I first want to dispel the most common myth I saw being repeated in that reply section. There are still so many people that falsely believe that the reason hamsters chew on their bars is because they're chewers. They have to do it to keep their teeth down. Now, while it is true that hamsters, being rodents, have teeth that grow continuously and need to be kept down through chewing hard things like hard food or wood or other safe materials, metal bars are not one of those materials that their teeth are made to chew, and it's not safe for them to be chewing on them. Bar chewing has absolutely nothing to do with their need to chew and everything to do with their mental state. The stress they're facing, the boredom they're facing, these are things that lead to bar chewing, not a lack of chew toys. Okay, so we've established that bar chewing is caused by stress and boredom, and unless your hamster is brand new to your home, you definitely should be figuring out what is causing that stress or what is causing that boredom and fixing it. But what is the actual harm that can come from just letting them bar chew? While hamsters have evolved to have a relatively strong jaw for their size, their jaw and teeth are not strong enough to chew through things like metal. Chewing on something as hard as metal can not only damage the teeth by chipping them or snapping them, which can make eating very difficult and very painful for the hamster, but it can also force the teeth to grow malaligned, which means they grow in the opposite direction or the wrong direction to where they're supposed to be growing. Having malaligned teeth will make it much harder and again much more painful for your hamster to eat their food, but also in the worst case scenarios, malaligned teeth can actually grow into the hamster's face and even up into their snout. As well as the serious damage that chewing metal will cause for their jaw and teeth, there's also another condition that is very common in bar chewing hamsters called bar rub. Now, this occurs when the hamster is chewing on a bar when there is another bar sitting just above them. This rubs on their snout as they're chewing and literally wears away the fur and the flesh. In some cases, this will just lead to a permanent scarring of the snout for the hamster, which in itself can be uncomfortable and can have an effect on their ability to breathe. But in other cases, the bar can actually rub right through the skin, causing open wounds and even causing an infection. Having an infection is incredibly painful. The hamster will need to go on medication, they will need to have special care. It is not a fun situation for them. And again, it can cause permanent damage to their ability to breathe, which for an animal that can already have issues with respiratory disease and respiratory illness is really not a good thing. And aside from the physical damage that bar chewing can and does cause, it can also have an effect on their mental health. If a hamster is just left to bar chew persistently and the owner doesn't try to stop it or doesn't try to fix the situation, the hamster can actually become obsessed with bar chewing to the point where even if you move them into another larger, more suitable enclosure and give them more things to do and solve the problems that are causing their stress, they may still continue bar chewing out of habit. As far as it's known, this particular issue isn't actually fixable. If the hamster is allowed to chew for so long that they become obsessed with bar chewing, then the only solution to it is to control the behavior by moving them into a barless cage like a plastic or glass tank. The damage that bar chewing can do to them on a physical and mental level is something to be taken very seriously. It's not a behavior to just be pushed to the side as, oh, just a normal hamster behavior. No. It's not normal, it's not healthy, and it will harm them unless you fix the problem. Also, just to add in, if you don't fix the initial problem that's causing the bar chewing, then your hamster is still being exposed to that stressor. And suffering with stress long term does again have negative effects on the hamster's health and well-being. There are methods you can use for temporarily discouraging bar chewing while you try and fix the situation. For example, putting wooden pegs on the bars or threading paper through the bars. Those are both very useful and often very successful ways of temporarily preventing bar chewing. Ultimately, the only way you are going to solve the situation is by finding out what's causing your hamster that stress and that boredom and fixing that situation. So I hope this video is now finally making sense and I can actually release it and not have to film it again. I hope I got my points across. I hope I've managed to make everything nice and clear. If you did enjoy it, if you did find it useful and helpful, don't forget to support the channel by leaving a thumbs up. You can also share the video with your friends and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And in the meantime, I will see you guys hopefully very soon with a less ranty, less frustrating video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.